Ever walked away from a conversation feeling drained, confused, like something just didn't sit right, but you couldn't explain why? Like you were somehow wrong, even though deep down you knew you weren't? That heavy feeling in your chest, that mental replay of what just happened? That's not random. And it's definitely not in your head. What if I told you that some people can make you feel small, guilty, or unsure without ever raising their voice? No shouting, no obvious conflict, just subtle shifts that leave you questioning yourself. They smile, they sound reasonable, they even act like they care. But somehow, you always end up doubting your feelings and second-guessing your reality. This is how manipulation really works. Quiet, invisible, and incredibly effective. The most dangerous part? You don't even realize it's happening while you're in it. Manipulation isn't loud or obvious. It doesn't come with clear warning signs or dramatic behavior that's easy to spot. In fact, the most effective manipulators don't look like villains at all. They don't introduce themselves as people who want to control you. Instead, they show up as the people you trust. Friends, partners, co-workers, even family members. They smile, they listen, they say the right things at the right time. But beneath that surface, something subtle is happening. They shift conversations in ways that make you question yourself. They twist situations so that you feel responsible for their actions. Over time, you start doubting your own thoughts, your own emotions, your own judgment. And because everything seems so normal on the outside, you don't immediately recognize it as manipulation. You just feel off, confused, and slowly disconnected from your own sense of reality. Here's the part most people never realize. Manipulators do have a weakness, and it's not arguing, explaining, or trying to prove them wrong. Their biggest weakness is boundaries. Real, clear, unshakable boundaries. Not the kind you talk about or think about, but the kind you actually enforce through your actions. Manipulation only works when you're unsure, when you hesitate, when you feel the need to explain yourself. The moment you stop doing that, when you stand firm without over-explaining, without defending, without seeking approval, the entire dynamic begins to break. Boundaries cut off their access to your doubt, your guilt, and your need to be understood. And here's the key. Boundaries are not words, they are behavior. It's not what you say you'll tolerate, it's what you consistently allow or stop allowing. Once your actions match your limits, manipulators lose their control because there's nothing left for them to twist or use against you. One of the most common manipulation tactics is turning your emotions into the problem instead of their behavior. Instead of acknowledging what they did, they question how you feel. You're upset, and suddenly, you hear things like, "Why are you so sensitive?" Or, "It's not that serious." In that moment, the focus shifts. Now you're defending your right to feel, instead of them explaining their actions. That's the trap. Imagine someone cancels plans on you last minute. You feel disappointed, that's completely normal. But instead of apologizing, they respond with, "Wow, I can't believe you're upset about this." Now you're the one under pressure, trying to justify your feelings. That's how manipulation quietly takes control. The boundary here is simple but powerful. You stop debating your emotions. You don't explain, you don't argue, you don't try to prove anything. You calmly say, "I hear you, but this is how I feel." And then you stop. No back and forth, no defending. When you refuse to question your own feelings, manipulators lose one of their strongest tools, your self-doubt. Another powerful tactic manipulators use is making you feel responsible for their emotions. They don't always argue or force you direct. Instead, they create guilt. They become cold, distant, or disappointed the moment you say no. And suddenly, you feel this pressure to fix it, even when you did nothing wrong. That guilt isn't natural, it's designed. For example, imagine someone asks to borrow money, and you politely refuse because it's not right for you. Instead of respecting your decision, they go quiet, act hurt, or say something like, "I guess I can't rely on you." Now the focus shifts again. You start feeling bad, questioning yourself, maybe even offering a smaller amount just to ease the tension. That's how they pull you back in. The boundary here is learning to separate your choices from their reactions. You don't rush to fix their mood. You don't apologize for having limits. You allow them to feel whatever they feel without taking it on as your responsibility. Their disappointment is not proof that you're wrong. It's simply their reaction. And when you stop carrying emotions that aren't yours, their control over you begins to fade. Manipulators are often incredibly convincing with their words. They know exactly what to say to calm you down, to give you hope, to make you believe things will change. They apologize, they promise, they paint a better future, and, for a moment, it feels real. But here's the truth. Words are easy. Anyone can say anything. What actually matters is what they do, consistently, over time. This is where patterns come in. A single apology means nothing if the behavior repeats. A promise has no value if it's not followed by action. Instead of listening to what someone says they will do, you start watching what they actually do again and again. Do they show up? Do they follow through? Do their actions match their words, without you having to remind them? The boundary here is quiet observation. You don't argue, you don't chase, you don't try to force change. You simply step back and pay attention to patterns. Because patterns reveal truth, and once you focus on that, the illusion created by empty promises disappears. Another subtle way manipulators keep control is by getting you to give more while they give less. You put in effort, attention, care, hoping they'll meet you halfway, but instead, they pull back. They reply less, show up less, invest less, and you respond by trying harder. You text again. You adjust your schedule. You overextend yourself just to keep the connection alive. Without realizing it, you've stepped into a one-sided dynamic. This is where the boundary of matching energy becomes powerful. Instead of overgiving, you start reflecting what you receive. If they make minimal effort, you do the same. If they show consistency, you meet it. Not out of spite, but out of self-respect. You stop chasing people who are comfortable letting you chase them. Matching energy isn't about playing games, it's about restoring balance. It teaches others that access to you requires mutual effort, not one-sided sacrifice. And once you stop over-investing, manipulators lose the advantage they had when you were the one doing all the work. Have you ever been in a conversation that feels like it's going nowhere, no matter how clearly you explain yourself? You make a point, they twist it. You clarify, they twist it again. The topic keeps shifting, the same arguments repeat, and hours later, you feel exhausted but nothing is actually resolved. That's not a real conversation. That's a loop, and it's one of the most effective tools manipulators use. The goal isn't understanding, it's to wear you down until you give up, agree, or doubt yourself. The more you stay, the more energy you lose, and the more control they gain. The boundary here is recognizing the loop early and choosing to exit. You don't need to win the argument or prove your point. You simply say, "This isn't going anywhere. Let's stop here," and remove yourself. No anger, no explanation, no permission needed. Walking away doesn't mean you lost, it means you refuse to play a game designed to drain you. When you step back and look at these boundaries together, you start to see a pattern. You stop arguing about your feelings. You stop taking responsibility for other people's emotions. You stop believing words without proof. You stop overgiving where there's no effort. And you stop engaging in conversations that go nowhere. Each one may seem simple on its own, but together, they form a complete shift in how you protect your energy and your reality. These boundaries aren't about control or being harsh. They're about clarity. They remove confusion, cut through manipulation, and bring everything back to what's real. Your feelings, your limits, and observable behavior. When you apply them consistently, something powerful happens. You stop reacting, and you start choosing. And, in that shift, manipulation loses its grip, because it can only survive in uncertainty, not in clarity. At the end of all this, there's one truth you need to hold on to. You are not the problem, and you never were. The confusion, the self-doubt, the emotional exhaustion, none of that came from weakness. It came from being in situations where your boundaries were quietly ignored or tested. And now, you see it clearly. These boundaries aren't about becoming cold or distant, they're about becoming solid. About knowing where you stand, what you feel, and what you will no longer tolerate. And the moment you start applying them even in small ways, your entire life begins to shift. You feel lighter, clearer, more in control. So start today. Pick one boundary and use it. You don't need to be perfect, you just need to be consistent. Because on the other side of this is something powerful: peace. If this resonated with you, make sure to subscribe for more content like this. And remember, you deserve respect, clarity, and a life that doesn't drain you.